Part 1, Chapter 1, Section 7. Control of the center. The four squares E4, E5, D4, and D5 on each side respectively are the center squares, and control of these squares is called control of the center. The control of the center is of great importance. No violent attack can succeed without controlling at least two of these squares, and possibly three. Many a maneuver in the opening has for its sole object the control of the center, which invariably ensures the initiative. It is well always to bear this in mind, since it will often be the reason of a series of moves which could not otherwise be properly understood. As this book progresses, I shall dwell more fully on these different points. At present, I shall devote some time to openings taken at random and explain the moves according to the general principles. The student will in that way train his mind in the proper direction and will thus have less trouble in finding a way out when confronted with a new and difficult situation. Example 18. E4, E5, Knight F3, D6. A timid move. Black assumes a defensive attitude at once. On principle, the move is wrong. In the openings, whenever possible, pieces should be moved in preference to pawns. D4. White takes the offensive immediately and strives to control the center so as to have ample room to deploy his forces. Knight D7. Black does not wish to relinquish the center and also prefers the text move to C6, Knight C6, which would be the more natural square for the knight. But on principle, the move is wrong, because it blocks the action of the queen's bishop, and instead of facilitating the action of black's pieces, tends on the contrary to cramp them. Bishop C4, H6. Black is forced to pay the penalty of his previous move. Such a move on black's part condemns by itself any form of opening that makes it necessary. White threatened Knight G5, and black could not stop it with Bishop E7 because of D takes E5, Knight takes E5. If D takes E5, then Queen D5, Knight takes E5, D takes E5, Queen H5, and white wins a pawn and has besides a perfectly safe position. Knight C3, Knight G to F6, Bishop E3, Bishop E7, Queen E2. It should be noticed that white does not castle yet. The reason is that he wants to deploy his forces first, and through the last move force black to play C6 to make room for the queen as white threatens Rook D1 to be followed by D takes E5. Black's other alternatives would finally force him to play E takes D4, thus abandoning the center to white. C6, Rook D1, Queen C7, castles. With this last move, white completes his development, while black is evidently somewhat hampered. A simple examination will suffice to show that white's position is unassailable. There are no weak spots in his armor, and his pieces are ready for any maneuver that he may wish to carry out in order to begin the attack on the enemy's position. The student should carefully study this example. It will show him that it is sometimes convenient to delay castling. I have given the moves as they come to my mind without following any standard book on openings. Whether the moves given by me agree or not with the standard works, I do not know. But at the present stage of this book, it is not convenient to enter into discussions of mere technicalities, which the student will be able to understand when he has become more proficient. Example 19. E4, E5, Knight F3, D6, D4, Bishop G4. A bad move which violates one of the principles set down, according to which at least one knight should be developed before the bishops are brought out, and also because it exchanges a bishop for a knight, which in the opening is generally bad unless there is some compensation. D takes E5, Bishop takes F3. D takes e5, loses a pawn. Queen takes f3, D takes e5, bishop c4, queen f6. If knight f6, queen b3 wins a pawn. Queen b3, b6, knight c3, c6, to prevent knight d5. Black, however, has no pieces out except his queen, and white, with a bishop and a knight already developed, has a chance of obtaining an advantage quickly by playing knight d5 anyway. The student is left to work out the many variations arising from this position. These examples will show the practical application of the principles previously enunciated. The student is warned against playing pawns in preference to pieces at the beginning of the game, especially h2, h3, a2, a3, h7, h6, and a7, a6, which are moves very commonly indulged in by beginners.